The only software that works with the Vissen scanner is OfficeCam, available for free from Vissen's website, along with a barely adequate manual. You can't operate the scanner without this software, and you can't operate the software without the scanner. Within OfficeCam is the book page editor, which lets you fix some image issues before you export the job. Note, there is no manual for book page editor, which is what this series of videos attempts to address. However, some image issues, such as brightness and contrast, can't be fixed with book page editor, but after exporting the job, you can use other software to fix these sorts of issues. OfficeCam offers a range of export formats or outputs. We only used PDF, searchable. Once you've installed the OfficeCam software and the scanner is connected, follow these steps. Before you start, you'll need to make some decisions, such as which software settings will be suitable for the type of material you're scanning, how you'll name the output files, and where you'll store these files. OfficeCam has default settings for much of this, but you may want to change them to suit your way of working. Almost all settings will hold from one scanning session to the next, so you'll likely only have to set these up once. The exception is the prefix field, which you may need to change for each job if you decide not to use the default. Oh, and if you update the software, you may need to reset these settings. So make sure you make a note of them or take a photo once you've got them as you want them. I spent at least a week testing various combinations of settings in the OfficeCam software, trying to come up with the most optimal settings for the newspapers we were to scan. You may have to do this sort of testing for the type of materials you're working with. However, if you're scanning newspapers that have both color and black and white sections, then save yourself some time by trying the settings we used and that we found worked for our collection. Note, while it's tempting to set the cropping to straight fitting, we found that curve fitting was a better option, as it's the only one that puts a dashed orange line down the center of the screen to help you align the center of the newspaper spread. By default, OfficeCam will automatically give a file name to every scanning job that you export. That file name information is set in the prefix field in the software. You can change this to use a naming convention that you want, but be aware that OfficeCam will still automatically append one of its two naming conventions to the end of your file name. You can remove this later. If you set your own prefix, you'll need to modify it for each export job so that you have unique file names. Because we wanted to store our files by date, we set our prefix to use the ISO date format of year, month, day, followed by the issue number, if there was one, and an abbreviated code for the newspaper. OfficeCam has a default location for all files it exports, but you can change this by clicking the folder icon above the right panel. As I mentioned earlier, once you've set up OfficeCam, your settings will hold for each subsequent session unless you change them. The only thing you might need to change for each job is the prefix. Now let's look at the OfficeCam workspace and its main controls. Note, what you see here depends on the type of scanning you're doing. In this case, we're using the Book tab. Above the right panel are the large buttons for starting and stopping a scan and for exporting a job. If you've selected Automatic mode, you'll see the Start button, which changes to say Stop once you've started a scan. If you're using Manual mode, this button is only ever called Scan. At the very top is a cog icon for settings. If you're exporting to PDF, this is where you set the compression settings, etc. Again, you only need to set these once. There are two fixed-width panels in the main workspace. The left contains the thumbnails of each scanned double-page newspaper spread, while the one on the right has the file type icons and names of all the files in your designated output folder. Let's take a closer look at the left panel. Each thumbnail is numbered, and there are 2 images per scan. If you click on a thumbnail, you'll see some blue arrows for moving those pages up or down the sequence, and a red X for deleting the selected page spread. You can also double-click in the white space between the thumbnails to add a new scan in that position, though that doesn't always work. If you want to modify any of the pages in the book page editor, you double-click the thumbnail to open the first page of the two. Note, this is the only way you can open Book Page Editor. At the bottom of the panel are some more controls. I've only used two of these, the camera icon, which allows you to do a single scan, and the delete icon, which deletes all the selected thumbnails, in essence, the whole job, because all are selected by default. In the right panel is a list of the files currently in the designated output folder. You can double-click on an icon here to open the file in its relevant application. In the center of the workspace is the image that the camera sees right now. In this screenshot, there's only the black mat, with nothing on it. Because the Book tab is the active tab and the curve-fitting cropping option is set, you can see an orange dashed line down the center of the image, with shaded orange around it. The software uses that center line when it splits a two-page spread into single pages. The shaded bits are the extent of the overlap that the camera will capture. Once the image has been captured, you will only see this overlap when editing the image in the Book Page Editor mode. It's a very useful feature for fixing things that may have gone wrong, as you'll see in the troubleshooting videos in this series. Note, you can only see these orange markings if you're on the Book tab with curve fitting set as your cropping option. One final but critical setting for newspapers is the dots per inch DPI setting along the bottom of the screen. Again, after a lot of trial and error, I found that 300 DPI worked the best. I had assumed that a higher DPI would give a better result, but it didn't for this collection.